Hello and welcome to the Fishbowl. My name is Levi. This is Christina. We're
Hi,
your
everyone.
hosts for this program. And joining us in the studio we have Malvinus. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
And we also have Cameron.
Hello.
Welcome, guys. We are also joined by our young talent here, Esmeralda and Freddie. But this program will be discussing preparing for takeoff and how we are ready for God to use us. Buell has some things to say about this, Buell Fogg, so we'll be right back with you after Buell.
I love flying. Sometimes I'm never happier than when I'm on a plane because I know I have quiet time. I do. I have the opportunity to sit, the opportunity to sleep, read, talk to flight attendants if need be, whatever the case is. But in all the annals of flying, you know if you fly enough that those pilots are in the cockpit before you take off, preparing themselves. They're making sure the aircraft is safe because that's their number one priority. And you do not take off unless all systems are go. Same thing with weather. You can sit there and you can wait for the weather. Once the weather clears, then you're ready for takeoff. You know, it's true in our Christian lives as well. There are certain checks that we need to make constantly along the way to know that we're ready for takeoff. And as long as something is there hindering us and holding us back, we're not going to be very effective as instruments of flight as God wants us to be, flying and soaring above the muck and the mire of this life. I was brought face to face with this too by a young lady by the name of Anne, who shared with us in a group counseling session that she had been sexually abused when she was 6 years old. When Anne shared that story, she was 39. And she was a living demonstration that when you have issues in your life that have not been taken care of, you're going to have a hard time moving on in life. And my advice to her, my counsel to her, as I hugged her and gave her assurance that we were there for her, was that we don't have any magic wands to wave over those situations and make them go away. They happen. We can't change that. But we can change how we view that and how we live every day of our lives. And so one thing that we wanted to assure Anne of is we can't take care of the problem, but we can love you for who you are. And we want you to take this opportunity to move on. Anne has since done that. The power of Jesus in her life has enabled her to move on. And I'd love to share the story of these group of Vietnam vets who are in New York City at a rally. As a Buddhist monk got up and told them the story of a young man and young woman who were married with a child, and how the young woman and the son were taken from this man. And years later, he would be confronted with the young man at his door. And the Buddhist monk looked at them, and he said to the soldiers there, he said, the old man never found happiness, never found his son who was probably still living, because he was too busy holding on to the bones of the past. Are you holding on? It's time to let go.
That was really interesting. So let's get straight into this. How do we let go and let God? What does that mean to you?
To let go of things we're holding on to in life, maybe?
And what things?
To let go and to let God lead. It's like for us students, it reminds me of so many things that I've dreamt of in the past. I've dreamt of going to college and getting a career and building a house and getting married and all that. But that's not only the only things that are important. That's important, but to let all those things go, even though you can go along with them, but to let God lead you so that wherever God takes you is where you go, not what you want to go. You know, I think that's what I think in letting go of the material things and letting God lead you.
Letting God take control, yes.
So in what ways do you let God take control? How do you get God to take control?
I've always found it a fairly difficult question because my reading of the Bible, in lots of places, the Bible's quite silent. In the book of Judges, it'll say, and God called so-and-so, but it doesn't say exactly how God did it, or what so-and-so did even to listen to God's call. What I find reassuring is the sort of people God called. He called sinners. No one was out of reach. Matthew was a tax collector. Lazarus was dead. Balaam's donkey was a donkey, but God still managed to use them. So maybe there's a bit of hope for me if I'm staying receptive to him.
Receptiveness, I think, is a major thing also, because in the calling of Isaiah, we get a little glimpse into that. It's where, I think it's in the 6th chapter of Isaiah, where he says to God, God says to Isaiah, "Whom shall I send?" And Isaiah replies, "Here I am, send me." It's about being willing
I think
to be used by God.
I think to start with as well, to let God lead you, you gotta actually have a relationship with Him to start with. So
absolutely, yeah.
obviously, to have have a relationship with God is gonna means that every day you're gonna talk to God and
Otherwise,
let Him speak
how are we
to
going to
you.
hear His voice if we
There's
don't
no
have
way.
that connection
There's
with
no
Him?
way. Yeah.
Yeah, they say that only mothers can tell the difference between their identical twins sometimes. It's like with us and God.
That's right.
If we know Him, then we know when He's talking to us
Yeah.
and when to respond to Him. So,
I've heard so many people that say they listen to God's voice, and before I used to think it's so weird to listen to God's voice, but when you actually try to listen to God's voice,
can
you
hear
can
it.
almost hear it.
That's
You can
true.
hear, not almost, you can actually hear God's voice, and that means every day you go away, you meet people, take advantage of everything that's happening, and allow every day as if God is speaking to you. Think of everything that you do, whoever you meet, as if God is speaking to you.
so are you saying that the voice of God, you think, has to be an audible thing? Is this something you can hear, or?
Well, you really can hear. You can. I have heard God's voice. I have spoken to God and said, "God, I want you to. I'm not gonna do this until you tell me exactly what I need to do." And I really have heard God's voice speaking. Sometimes you can hear God's voice. Sometimes you can meet somebody who will tell you that, "Oh, I think you should do this," and I suggest I put one and one together, and I never say that's coincidence. I think that's God speaking to me. That's how I see it. That's how I do it. I don't know how
that's
other people do it. Yeah.
We have to cut to a break, but this discussion will continue in just a few moments.
Welcome back. Now, let's get a little bit more in depth about this, the whole letting go and letting God. What specific things do you let go?
So do you think, Christina, that we have to let go because there are certain things that hold us back from letting God use us?
Oh, definitely. I mean, so many emotional things. So many teenage girls, for instance, you know, they're known for depression, for instance. How much does depression stop you from knowing God?
I like the point that Bill brought up about flying. That guy tells a lot of stories about flying. I think he must be a real jet setter. He travels all over the world. But he said that that a pilot has to make sure that everything is ready before they take off. They can't have anything holding them back. And I think that's similar to the way we relate with God.
Sometimes I long for a nice clear set of guidance telling me exactly what I need to let go, what I need to pick up, so that I can do it and be comfortable that I'm living the Christian life. Some of the things that God asked people to let go are quite disturbing. Think of Hosea, who must have let go of his reputation and his status in the community in a big way.
That's right.
And yet that was what God wanted for him. I'm sure that God doesn't expect that of us all. I think any desire to follow God or to have God work in your life that doesn't spring from a desire just to know who God is and to be with Him won't in the long run lead anywhere useful. I think the beginning place is we just discover God and God discovers us, and as we grow He'll help us on our own individual journey. So
There's another example of that with Abraham. I mean, he had to essentially let go of everything he held dear with his own son.
Yeah.
And I think that through doing that, whilst God intervened, he proved to God that there was absolutely nothing in his life that was more important to him than serving God.
Well, letting go and letting God, does that mean that God changes you for the better? Is this an effect that He has on you? I mean, we've talked about this before, how, you know, you'll emulate God when He comes and you accept Him.
It reminds me of when I was 16 or 17. When I was so young, I used to had a really bad temper,
Yeah.
and that temper used to affect me all the time
many areas.
in many areas, including the way that my relationship with God. And I got to that point where I had a fight with guys at school,
Wow.
like boys, and it was really weird for a female. Yeah, and I did. And
win.
but I got to a point where I was just like, I'm sick of this anger that comes into me, and this short temper thing is affecting my relationship with God. I went in my room and cried and said, God, I'm sick of this. I'm not going to talk to you again if you're not going to do something immediately. And I remember a change that came into me that it's just like something came and wiped away all that anger. And it reminds me that I used to joke all the time that people can come and pour water on me and I would not do anything. I would not move because I think God completely wiped away.
Ice cold water.
Let's
we
test
won't.
that.
We won't do it with the fish water. We want to keep Freddie and Esmeralda alive.
And from there, that means I had a relationship with God which was much more stronger and much more closer. And so I really begged
And
God
so
to
he
let
helped
go.
you to let go
He helped me to let go, and I
Wow.
haven't gone back to that. So that means really God
I'm
totally
really
wiped it out.
glad.
You're safe.
I think it's really special to see examples of when it really happens, because that
Praise
makes it
God,
all
yeah.
worth it. It brings it all real.
Another intriguing aspect to the discussion is to realise that God has always surprised the people he's come in contact with.
Yes.
And I think we almost need to expect to be surprised, and that's part of letting go. Is we really long for, a comfortable God, perhaps not a father in heaven, but a grandfather in heaven who's
That's right.
nice and loving to us. But God's sometimes very uncomfortable and unpredictable, and I guess that's part of the excitement of being a Christian.
The people who are afraid to let go because they're afraid of losing themselves? Like, if God comes into everyone's life, they have kind of this picture that he turns everyone into the same person, and they don't want to lose their individuality.
Oh, so you're saying they might lose their personality
They're-
if
yeah.
God takes control of them?
Yeah, who am I? Once God is, what is,
That's kind of a hard one.
I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm getting married in a week and 6 days.
Congratulations.
And when you are making those sort of decisions, there's no denying the fact that you are seriously giving up a lot by the prospect of getting married.
But you're probably at the stage where you've weighed up that what you're gaining is more than what
The
you're...
intriguing thing is not only have I learnt so much about my fiancée over the past years, because of my relationship with her, I've discovered an immense amount about myself. And I wouldn't say that the sacrifice I've made has compromised my individuality at all. In that sense, it's enhanced it.
Okay.
And perhaps it's a model that will work here in this situation.
Definitely.
God, as creator, created us as individuals. So the decision to let go and to let God is really a decision to let God help you become, the very best you that you can be.
And I guess, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
you're right.
Go ahead.
I've seen a similar thing illustrated through the spokes of a wheel, and that we represent individual spokes of the tyre, and as we get closer to the centre, we actually get closer to each other. That's the effect that happens. And I think that includes our relationships with others and
All
with
right,
God.
I'm going to break in here.
You can't do that.
I'm sorry, but we have to. Okay, we just got to take a quick ad break, but we'll be back, so stay tuned.
Welcome back once again to the Fishbowl. We've been talking about letting God use us and how do we prepare for takeoff, more or less. And I've got a question, like, how do we choose to let things go? Like God said, it's harder for a rich man to enter heaven than for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. And I think that it's a hard thing to let go of what we're attached to here on earth, to let God fully use us.
I think it's just a matter of God gives you a choice. Like when you're ready to come to God, when you're ready to let go, you're going to let go. When you're not ready yet, you're going to wait until some people take long to let go. Some people just let
take a
go
short amount of
in
time.
short amount of time and just needs us friends praying for other people who are struggling to let go. But I think it just takes time on each person.
I
depending on what they're
actually
going
think
through.
that it is to do with your focus. Like, are we actually trying to see God in our lives, or are we simply trying to make it to heaven? Because the rich young ruler, I saw this in a sermon recently, and the rich young ruler, his primary goal was to get to heaven. He wasn't thinking about being a Christian, seeing Jesus, and what did he do? He couldn't do it. He couldn't let go of his possessions. But Zacchaeus, he found it much easier because his focus was to see God, and that's where we should be. Like, he could let go, and he gave all his money to the poor.
That's right.
Because he wanted to see
Look
God.
what God's giving us. I mean, it's like, do you want these material possessions or your house or this, or do you want heaven and everlasting life? I mean, when you look at it from this perspective, you're just like, duh.
Yeah, that's right. We want the easy way out.
And I think when we do give up our worldly possessions, it'll be an amazing journey for us as well, because we got more time to focus on God.
Giving up worldly possessions is again an interesting idea. I could give everything to the poor today, and then I'd have to live off the charity of others tomorrow.
That's true.
And how
do we
much?
take it?
How far do you take it? The instructions in the New Testament are those who are blessed with money to give. Instruction isn't necessarily to make themselves poor.
That's right.
No.
But I guess it is a change of focus. It's
That's right.
recognising that the money we have here is very temporal. The worldly goods we have, they're not going to last.
And it's all from God anyway.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
And for some of the people who question or like, oh, if only you could just tell me what to do. I mean, God's given us this free will, who some people, they want it, and then when we have it, we just like, show us a sign, or, it's really funny how ironic everything is.
Exactly.
It reminds me of the children of Israel. We remind, like we're the same as the children of Israel, really, because, we wanted a sign every single time, but God is just right there and saying, okay, I just want you to let go of this. And we're still saying, oh, God,
let me work.
we have got one leg over to where God is in heaven, one leg on the other side where the devil is. So it's really hard to
play the role of both.
Yeah, that's right.
We had a question that came through actually that talks about how far we should actually take it. It's very interesting. I'll get Christina to read it.
We are picking this one because this was really funny.
Because it's orange.
It says, I love my pet, but sometimes I feel like I would spend more time with God if I didn't spend so much time with my dog. Should I rehome my dog so my focus is more on God?
Short answer? I don't think so.
It's really hard.
If it were a
It's a
person,
hard.
you'd say, no, keep him and try to bring him to God too.
Yeah. I mean, these fish are distracting me on the odd occasion. Should we?
We should
Get rid of them.
Get rid of them.
distracting me
I
from
mean,
God.
Malvina,
Food.
let's test the water on
I
her.
get distracted by food. Like a couple of times a day, I just get hungry and I need
Maybe
to
you
eat.
should stop eating.
Maybe.
Perhaps keep you to focus on God. No, I think the point is that when our worldly possessions are so many and so great that we're losing our focus on God, then it's time to take action. But I don't think you should get rid of your pet.
In that case, it would be get rid of my wife or something, or stop reading the Bible because it's deserting you, or you can't pray
Yeah,
enough.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Of the Israelites leaving Egypt, a 12th of them were chosen as priests,
Okay.
but 11/12 of them weren't.
Yes.
And to all intents and purposes, God wanted them to live God-fearing and respectable and honest and caring and generous lives. But they would be, by most standards, very normal lives. He didn't choose 11/12 to be priests and just a few people to be normal.
It's true, Cameron.
And he cares about our
cut now.
relationship.
Sorry, Cameron. It's very true what you say. We have to cut now. Malvinas is going to share a small snapshot of her experience with God.
Last semester, I was going through some really hard things. Financially, I was going through paying $7,000 fees for school, and I've got a little child who's 9 years old, and I was going through that as well with him at school. And one day I just was over it. I didn't have any money at all. I needed to go to school, and I usually drive to Sydney for school, which is where I do my nursing. And I didn't have any petrol at all, and I just prayed and I said, God, I'm gonna take it by faith, and I'm gonna just believe that by faith you're gonna take me to Sydney even though my car was on empty. So I got in the car, I turned the car on, and I was playing this CD which is from the Heritage Singers, which says you turn water into wine, and I closed my eyes and I said, God, I'm gonna let you turn the water in my car and turn it in petrol in whichever way, but I need to go to Sydney. So by faith, I reversed my car and I started driving. As I got probably around Morisset area, the petrol, the gauge of my car started going up and it went on the quarter of the tank. I drove all the way to Sydney, but during that process of driving, I was like shaking because I could not believe what was going on, and I was just had tears running through my eyes. I drove all the way to Sydney. I got there and I could not wait to tell somebody that this had happened. I got back home. It's the time I got back, the petrol, just the tank and the gauge just went back to where it was, and I just could not stop praising God and just the amazement that He had given me just by the faith that I had on that day, and God was just there for me. And I just want to thank God, and I never stop saying this every day, that God is good and His hope for us is just so true.
Wow. Well, that's a very special example.
Thank you so much for
Really
sharing
brought that
that.
alive, and I guess that's one of the best examples of how God used you when you were prepared for takeoff and ready to accept Him.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Malvinas, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Anytime. Cameron, you as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Freddie and
Esmeralda.
Esmeralda.
Thanks to all our viewers for joining us. We hope to see you again next time. Thanks, Levi, and I'm Christina. Enjoy some music that we're leaving for you.
My child, I want to remind you I didn't mean it to happen this way. Though I tried to prevent it somehow, sin stuffed it up one day. And now this has happened, and your sadness, it is tearing me into. Child of mine, when you are crying, my heart breaks for you.